proud of rescuing that owl. It was so big when it hit the pole up there in South Dakota. It hit the bowl and it hit the ground right next to me when it fell. And I was able to flag down an officer from Boston. He was an officer there in Rapid City, South Dakota, where I was visiting Jamie. I was helping her move out of James's house. She hasn't admitted that, but James has, and I want to thank James for that. No matter what happened between the two of them, at least he was honest about that. Yes, I did go to Virginia to see Natalie at her request, and she did threaten to kill herself if I didn't go, if I wasn't already on the road. So I went, and halfway there, mind you, I was living in Chapel, Nebraska. Halfway between Chapel, Nebraska and Virginia is, it's quite a lot. It's 1,700 miles to make it there. So I drove almost 4,000 miles round, over 4,000 miles round trip, all said and done, because I turned around midway through the trip to go all the way up to Rapid City, South Dakota, and then back down to Chapel because I needed to make the money so that I could go again. By that time, Mahaley Jean-Pierre had been able to find her own way home. Here's the thing, is that as far as what Jamie was informing me of, which, whether she was doing it to manipulate me or whether it actually happened and now she's one of those folks who I got to add to the list of people who protect their predators and harm their heroes. And I do have to say it that way. These men that you go to for help when you make bad dating decisions, when you go back and make more bad dating decisions, like going back to the same guy who just beat the hell out of you 3 weeks ago because you're lonely, and you run into a real decent guy who's not gonna expect to put out just because he helped you, you do realize what it's like to be alone. When you break up with somebody, you don't have to jump into another relationship, and you shouldn't be expected to have sex with somebody as a thank you. I mean, helping you out of that screwed up situation should be its own reward. That should be good enough. I don't remember what I named this video. That's because I saw that owl picture. That was before I went to Virginia, after I'd already started to go to Virginia once. After that picture was taken, I was stuck in Chapel, Nebraska again. I finally made the money to go. I still had a bunch of people that I wanted to go see, but I didn't have the money to go see them anymore. It cost all of my money to go back and see Jamie and see her son and help them move out. And there were multiple witnesses to it. It wasn't just me. There was also Todd Rust of Chapel, Nebraska, and his wife and her kids. And then there's the guy that I was staying with, Dallas Richmond. Todd Rust is the shitty stepfather that he talks about. I've got him recorded. I've also got his sister Nicole recorded on my channel. And I've got his brother Zach recorded on my channel. Not Brittany, though. Here's the thing with Brittany, is that she was a victim. And although her predator, Mark, is allowed in the family, she's really not. And that really began when Mark Richmond went to prison for what he did. You don't do that shit to your own daughter, you sick fuck. Anyway, the thing with me going to my friends for help, I'm not sure if you can tell, but I cry a lot. A lot of times I can't make a video, I can't function well enough to even do that. I have to sit here and try to work myself through it, because there is no joy in my life. It is a constant struggle for survival and a constant struggle to not get taken advantage of. It's a constant struggle for money, for fulfilling obligations, for help that doesn't help. I mean, if you're gonna give me $800 a month and you're gonna give me $1,200 worth of expenses and have me run around to places that don't help, and you tell me every time you go to this place and they'll help you, this place is supposed to help you, this place is supposed to help you, oh, this is what these places are supposed to do, this is what they do, that's why they exist. You go to those places, they say it's not their job. You get into an argument no matter what, because nobody wants to do their job, and they're not gonna. They say we got too many people to help them all. Well, I'm already aware of that. The triage should be based on evidence. It should be absolutely evidence-based. But who's going to sort through the evidence? I see a lot of people who get resources just because they pretend that something happened. I mean, we're getting to see real heavy how, even though George Floyd, color of his skin didn't have nothing to do with his death, it was an accidental death. That cop didn't kill him on purpose. That cop killed him because the cop's an idiot. It's not every officer's fault that that cop is an idiot. It is every officer's fault for not speaking up about how wrong that is. You guys point out a bunch of black folks that had knees on the back of their necks or in the middle of their backs, talking about how that's a race crime. Do you have any idea how many times officers have done that to me since Natalie was killed? One of their favorite tricks, they got two of them that they use real major. One of them is called the push me, pull you. This is an in-transit move. When they want to charge you with shit as an excuse for whatever the fuck they're doing that's illegal, one of them pulls you one way. The other one yanks you the other way and down to the ground and says, stop resisting, he's trying to get away. Or, of course, something to that effect. Always. You like how I say something to that effect? Yeah, I took that from one of my predators, Leslie Snell. Oh, well, in a roundabout way, I can go ahead and reinterpret it into whatever I want it to mean and out of context and play pretend. There's no evidence there. That was the importance of recording my court date, especially after everything that I had gone through to try to show what was going on and all of the threats and harassment by law enforcement up to it. I mean, law enforcement has repeatedly refused to follow the laws for me because I'm trying to turn them in and they know it. And I was repeatedly told by the folks that legally I'm supposed to turn them into that I needed to turn it into Scott DaCosta. So then when I try to turn it into Scott DaCosta, he and his department say they can't investigate themselves. Leslie Snell works for him, just so you know. And they tell me I got to go to the Nebraska State Patrol, whose job it is. And the Nebraska State Patrol tells me I got to turn it into Scott DaCosta. Scott DaCosta says I got to turn it into Nebraska State Patrol. I get frustrated after having to make all of these calls by myself. Of course I get frustrated. Who wouldn't? I'm trying to turn in predators and I'm being told I literally have to go to my predators to turn my predators in. How is this okay? After what Sergeant Gerhardt did when my friend Danny was killed. Yeah, he was killed by something that he put into a system that he shouldn't have. But the police knew that he was out there for hours. Hours. Hundreds of people had walked right by his corpse, within feet of his corpse. He'd been dead for so long that the fluids that were coming out of his mouth had made a trail to where there's a tree that was planted back there. It was multicolored, it was filled with mucus, and parts of it were already dried and crusted on the ground. This is how I found my friend Danny. After Natalie was killed and I was assaulted by Waylon Lolatai, Gerhardt was the one that I was supposed to turn that into, or who I tried to turn it into. He's not the one that should have been involved. I knew it and he knew it. Just like every Nebraska State Patrol officer and dispatch that told me that I had to go to Scott DaCosta to turn in Scott DaCosta committed a felony. When I tried to turn in Officer Schneider in Tacoma, and dispatch sent me on to Officer Schneider, they were committing a felony, and they knew very well what they were doing, but nobody cares. The only people who really pay attention here are the people who hate me. Those of you who call yourselves my supporters, do you share? Do you share this information? Do you share the evidence? Most of you came to my channel because you watched a Natalie Bollinger thing. And of course, it's entertainment to you. It's a game. There's people who get on here still. Interactive trolling, interactive bullying, interactive slander. Isn't it beautiful? You guys enjoy the hell out of it. You see that it's happening. Sometimes you'll tell me that it's wrong, but you speak out about how wrong it is. You see it with your own two eyes. You hear it with your own two ears. And you can't speak out about how wrong it is. Yes, you can. You are fully capable. You're a liar and you're making excuses. You are the reason that the world is the screwed up place that it is. It's not the predators running around and harming everybody that are the problem. It's the complacency of people like you who want to tell me that you're good people. You may be nice people, but you're people. A good person is not going to look the other way. That's how we ended up with slavery. That's how we ended up with chain gangs. That's how we ended up with concentration camps. That's how we ended up with homelessness. You say I shouldn't care what other people think, but you don't stop to consider how people treat me because of the way that they think, because of their miseducation, and because none of you who know the truth made any effort to convince them otherwise. You allowed them to harm me until I had to literally pretend to be one of them to show that the crimes they were committing against me were against the law. The ones that you guys, rather than looking at and realizing, yes, there's fucking evidence, you want to argue with me over the legality of it. Well, let me tell you what. If you want to argue the legality of it, instead of helping me to turn it in right away, like, of course, even these folks' own paperwork says, right away, right away. Let me find that part in specific. All right. And it's got all the types of abuse that I've been explaining to you in here too. Financial abuse, that includes theft, which has happened, fraud, which has happened, improper use of influence to gain control over money or property, that has happened. Financial abuse is the most common form of elder abuse. This is supposed to be disability abuse, but it's the same thing. Same paperwork, same statistics, or damn near. Neglect. This is a caretaker's failure or refusal to meet the needs of an older person or disabled person, by the way. This can include failure or refusal to provide food, shelter, clothing, personal hygiene, medical care, and social stimulation. I've been deprived entirely of my life. The life that I had before slander destroyed it. Before I had to do desperate things because I was being abused and nobody wanted to listen. Nobody wanted to do any of this friend shit. Let's see. Express any concerns you may have right away. Keep notes of the conversations. How many of these folks who we have recorded on my channel saying that they talk to this place or that place, even after I explain to them, if you do it alone, it's not going to work. Then they claim that they did it alone and that it didn't work, but they have no proof of it. I explained to them that saving the evidence and proving that it happened is important. See, I have to be able to back up my fucking statements. Unlike my predators, who don't have to show any evidence at all. All they have to do is call me mentally ill, make it their word versus mine, and they automatically win. In order for me to do anything about that, I have to have somebody else who gives a shit to say, hey, he's telling the truth. So, of course, I've got over 200 conversations with people that verify nearly every part of what I've been telling you, that it is the truth. Now, why is it that these hundreds, literally hundreds of people never came forward? We've got those excuses recorded from them, too, and they're angry about it. Oh my God, Sean, how could you post up my personal business? You led me on for months and months and months and months, and you had 50 different reasons for never keeping your word. At the last fucking minute, and the cops outright lied about those things. The cops pretended that none of those things happened. If you were a good person, you would have verified that I was telling the truth and helped me to get a new fucking court date. And yes, even based on just the evidence I have left, there's enough to get new court dates if someone actually cares. But here I am wasting another day waiting on somebody who may or probably won't call and has shown for the last 6 years she's not going to call. No matter how much she says she's going to, she'll procrastinate until it no longer makes a fucking difference. That's not a friend. And I want to believe it's different now. I want to believe she finally gets the fucking point. This isn't about you. All right? This isn't about you, so don't make it about you. When I'm reaching out for help, I am reaching out for help. You are aware that I'm reaching out to you for help. When my predators say that I'm not trying to get help, the least you can do is admit that I tried. When every time that I try to get help, you tell me 1,000,001 reasons why you can't, before you've ever heard what is even going on or what you can do to help. And you say repeatedly, I don't know how to help. I don't know how to help. Well, how about try doing what it says to do on this here paper? Do family or friend shit. Do those things. How many of y'all bother to check up on me? You tell me that you care when you are prompted to do so. By prompted, I mean you ignore me. I don't exist. I'm not a second thought in your fucking mind. You don't try to message me ever, unless I message you first. If I was somebody that you cared about, I would be somebody that you would want to hear from. If I was somebody that you cared about, and you could do something to help, why would you just repeatedly say, I don't know how to help? I'm literally telling you how you can help. You can tell the truth to the public and to the courts. That's not too much to ask, is it? Apparently it is. See, here's the thing about all these people wanting to keep their names secret. I can't. If you want it to be kept from the public, the unfortunate fact of the matter is you're going to have to admit things that you're trying to hide, and you're going to have to admit them to the public. The cops said I wasn't trying to get help. The Bollingers played all sorts of fucking head games. None of you gave a shit. I literally had to go to my predators for help because none of you gave a shit. Now you pretend to give a shit because you don't want your name up. Kind of like you pretended to give a shit for a while there before Natalie was killed, but then you magically were too busy, no matter what, after that. I don't like being bullshit. If you're my friend, be my friend. How am I going to be able to trust you if I can't believe the words that are coming out of your fucking mouth? How can I believe you care about me when you haven't made any time in the last 6 years and you go drinking at least 3 nights a week? You got plenty of time. Do you really need to go drinking 3 nights a week? Is that absolutely necessary? A lot of people say, Sean, I can't just drop everything every time you want my help. You don't drop it ever. You don't drop it ever. You'll make the time to fucking argue in texting for literally weeks or months. That's not maintaining a friendship. Telling somebody how to think and how to fucking feel and literally going out of your way to make it as inhumane a communication as possible. You're literally going out of your way to play stupid and reinterpret the entire English language and the meaning of words and sentence structure to fit whatever bullshit meme you want to throw at me. Stop throwing memes at me. That's not fucking help. The cop said I didn't try. It's not that I didn't try, it's that you didn't. You didn't try to understand. You didn't try to find out what was going on. You didn't try to keep your appointments. You didn't try to keep your word. When you told me that you were going to help me on a certain day, you didn't do it on that certain day. Not realizing that I have a lot of shit that I need to get done. Setting a day aside, hoping you're going to keep your word again when you historically, literally every time have not, you have not called. If you want to use the excuse of I record those calls, you know what? You didn't call me before I had the ability. When I first reached out to you for help, I did not have the ability to record those calls. When all this shit started, I didn't even know how to take screenshots to send you pictures of what was going on. Now I can, and you refuse to look. You tell me I need evidence. I have evidence. I've been sending you evidence. I've been sending you actual conversations with actual witnesses. I've been sending you conversations with people like Sarah Bacon, who talks about her kids being threatened. I've been sending you screenshots of people like Candace Bondurant letting me know about the cops harassing her after Natalie was killed. I got screenshots of the people that were threatening to kill me. I got all sorts of stuff. The problem is I didn't learn how to do any of that until after Natalie was killed. As far as my friends went, I wanted to believe them. I didn't have any reason to believe, well, with the exception of history. At the Starbucks, there was a lot of messed up stuff that those ladies, if they actually cared, could have done something about. Instead of telling me they're sorry, there's nothing they can do. No, there is something you can do. You're a fucking American. Jesus goddamn motherfucking Christ. You have the First Amendment. Exercise it. You're afraid of being retaliated against? If you tell the truth, that's not very American. Well, I guess that depends on your political opinions and where you live. I'm doing my best with what I got. But the longer I need to come forward, the more my resources dwindle. The older I get, I don't have a life to look forward to. I'm 42 and my body is already falling apart. I have never had a girlfriend. I've only had sex twice, and neither one of those were pleasant experiences. And neither one of them were with people that I wanted to have sex with to begin with. I see these memes on Facebook where you're saying if a man pressures you to have sex with him, then it's rape. I want you to go through and I want you to show me with any woman that I have ever known where I have ever pressured them for sex. Ever. But I've had women pressure me for sex. So what's your opinion? Is it only rape if you consent to having sex with them under pressure? Or if you hold out and say no, is it still rape? All these legal gray areas too, huh? Where they get to decide which direction it's more gray in favor of. In Boulder, Colorado, if you're a student at CU, let me explain to you two different people there in Boulder who were raped. There's Massilia. And Teresa Massilia was raped by someone she knew. Now, that someone that she knew, there's an officer named Clint, who, even though she was the victim, he treated her like hell, just like I was treated. He's one of the officers who took part in one of many assaults against me. And there's a witness named George on my channel, the recording. He was a witness to the assault. Now, what happened to Teresa Massilia is that she went to turn in her assailant, And when he was trying to rape her, she had fought back. She was not going to let it happen. And she's a small, small person. They did not charge her rapist. They charged her with assault for fighting back. But they didn't charge him with shit. So then another woman, she's going to college. She's going to be a doctor. She thinks she's going to be a pediatrician. That's a doctor for kids. Well, here's the problem. So she's going to school at CU, and she gets raped. And of course, you got to have Teresa Massilia on your mind, or many other people like that on your mind, where the victim was charged because they defended themselves. Sometimes it's just an assault, like in the case of Teresa Massilia, and sometimes, like in the case of Cyntoia Brown, sometimes it literally takes killing the son of a bitch. It is difficult for me knowing that you will support that only when it happens to women or minorities. For me, I have to take the abuse. And if I speak up about it, then you pretend like I deserve the abuse because I spoke up about it. And my predators want to push that mentally ill thing. See, that's the thing. They targeted me and they got away with it by calling me mentally ill to begin with. And as a result, I've been speaking out about that for years. And all these predators through my life wanted to come out of the woodwork after Natalie died. They thought, oh, hell, you know what? I did horrible shit to him because I thought I could get away with it because he's disabled. And now people might actually listen to him. I better do some slandering. I better pretend like I was actually the victim. You're a dumbass. Hey, little Jason Jepson. I got evidence from your mom, Terry, and evidence from your brother, Brandon, and evidence from your little sister, or big sister, I guess you're twins, Kimberly Jo Jepson. Your mom is easy to talk to. She's easy to locate for any investigator who wants to go to Broken Bow Public Schools and ask for Terry Jepson. Her voice is on my channel speaking about you, bud. You tried to use Natalie's death as an excuse to justify the horrible things that you'd done. So, little Jason Jepson tried to chop his sister's feet off with a garden hoe as a kid, and he's been pretty much a ruthless psychopath ever since. Likes his drugs way too much. Kim was actually the first friend I ever thought I'd get to keep. Because all growing up, I was in the system. My parents couldn't stay off the cocaine, and as a result, it was being shipped from one place to another, to another, to another, to another. And Chapel, Nebraska happened, and I got to meet Kim. Now, there's some other folks in my stories, like Dylan Bauer. These people are all involved in the situation with Scott DaCosta because of relations. See, Mike Jepson, who is the sheriff of Sherman County, is related to the former sheriff of Dual County because he got married to Sheriff Jim Haith's daughter and had a kid with her. Well, Jim Haith is no longer a cop. He actually went to prison because he was not a good cop. He was dating Polly Olson, and she's the tie-in for all of this. Polly Olson was the county clerk in Dual County. Her daughter is the city clerk, the chapel clerk. kind of a family thing there. They work in the same building as the sheriff. They visit with the sheriff, and they're awful friendly with the sheriff. And of course, they don't want to follow the law as mandated reporters because, well, these are their friends. They think that they get a leave of absence on their official mandated duties. They don't. Dylan Bauer is one of my bullies from high school. He got married to Polly Olson's daughter, who is the county clerk. Dylan Bauer, even though he was my bully in high school, after high school, he's one of the few people who actually apologized and tried making amends. Now, little Jason Jepson tried to murder the county or the city clerk. I drew a picture of her in high school. I'm trying to remember her name. Her last name would be Bauer now, Bauer. Kind of like the Wilhelm Bauer, the Type 21 submarine over in Germany. Dylan Bauer, he's in the story for a reason. Little Jason Jepson's in there for a reason. These people are all related to each other, though. This is Chapel, Nebraska, and it's obviously a lot of them have moved on to elsewhere, like Broken Bow and Sherman County. Some of them are my friends, and some of them ain't. But you know, even Polly Olson, I'm sure, could speak about how psycho little Jason Jepson is. Even from prison. Thank goodness she's going to prison. $18,000. Of course, that's nothing in comparison with the over $100,000 that was spent last year to illegally incarcerate me for trying to turn in the sheriff. Not just the sheriff. I announced loud and proud on my YouTube and my Facebook that I was trying to turn in Robert Franklin Warnick repeatedly. Same thing with Sheriff Scott DaCosta, repeatedly. Same thing with William Barr, repeatedly. And although all my efforts were thwarted, I still keep trying. And you notice they keep having to drop the charges. How many times are they allowed to press charges on me for crimes that were never committed and then drop them after destroying evidence and wasting all of our time and taxpayer dollars? How many times are they allowed to do that to one person before it constitutes harassment? How many times are they allowed to put me in that position and assault me repeatedly? This is blatant retaliation because I spoke up about abuse. And I had to go in alone. Now, you had the choice. You could have either come forward yourself or I could post it on the internet. That's basically the choices. I can't go to any of these places by myself. And if you're not going to go any of these places with me, then the only recourse that I have, the only option that I have, is to show it on the internet for God and everybody to see that I told the truth. And hopefully, eventually somebody might care, even if it's long after I'm dead. At least I told the truth. At least I showed the truth. And although I have communication issues based on how fucked up my environment is, and a lot of stuff doesn't come out right, when I realize I've made a mistake, I do something about it. I say something about it. I correct it. Sometimes there's stuff that I said that I was pretty sure was true. And I went back and took a look, and the evidence shows that I could be wrong. It doesn't show necessarily that I absolutely am. But of course, I speak up and I give leeway to those people. I say, hey, you're right. There is a possibility that you're correct. Now we need to get it into court. That's the important part. Fuck everything else that you did. The goal here is to get it into motherfucking court, not to procrastinate. Complacency in the face of tyranny only benefits the tyrant. Let me tell you how this system works. And we'll use the Nazis in World War II for our example. First, they ostracized the Jews, or homeless people. The homeless are who they went after first, not the Jews. Just so you know. But here in America, we need to make this synonymous with homeless, because the homeless are your modern day Jews. You blame them for everything. It's no longer allowed socially to take it out on black people or Jewish people or Muslim people. It's no longer allowed socially to take it out on Mexicans or brown people. You're not allowed to take it out on Native Americans anymore. You're not allowed to take it out on the disabled. But there's a catch. If those people are homeless, their groups don't give a shit about them anymore, so you can still take advantage of them. It is open season on homeless people, and has been for the entirety of my life. Homeless people are your go-to. When you want to blame somebody, you go to the homeless. You know, you can frame a homeless people a lot easier than you can convict somebody who's guilty. It's a lot easier to separate them from their friends and family. It's a lot easier to intimidate the people that might help them. Because as much as you guys want to pretend these biases don't exist, you express them every single day in your actions, in your decisions, and in your excuses. Now that people are dead, I don't give a fuck about your goddamn excuses. We're getting this shit into court. Either you're on board or you're not. If you're not, I'm still showing the truth. I'm still showing your involvement. And I'm still showing evidence that the cops fucking lied. Little Jason Jepson. We need to get back to this story because it's an important one. Little Jason Jepson, one of my predators, wanted to pretend like I was some sort of a horrible person. Get on Facebook and YouTube and slander the shit out of my name after Natalie died. Here's the thing, he tried to kill his fucking ex-wife. She was pregnant with their second kid, and he was always bragging about how he had a meth rock that was bigger than his thumb, and that it sat on the shelf with all of his other rocks that she didn't know what it was. She thought it was just a piece of quartz. He thought that was the funniest thing. But he got messed up out of his mind on them damn drugs and tried to kill her, was shooting at her. And that's how Dylan Baylor ended up with her. Now you're seeing how internal politics and internal bullshit quickly becomes more important than the evidence. Will your friends still respect you if you tell the truth? Will they still like you if you tell the truth? Will they be angry with you if you tell the truth? If you try telling the truth, are they just gonna talk over you and tell you you're a liar or you don't know what the fuck you're talking about? Or are they gonna pick out little bits and pieces of shit that happened and try to use that and pretend that the whole thing was all my fault? Or are they gonna pull out one little bit and piece, one little tiny phrase out of an entire video where I am talking about how wrong it is to kill people? And they're going to take that one little part out of the video and pretend that it means I'm threatening to kill them. Leslie Snell is a disgusting animal. We're all animals, but we're not all sick in the head like that. We all don't have that blonde-haired, blue-eyed mentality where we think we're superior to everyone and everyone must bow down to our will. Where if we say it, it must be right because we're white. Well, guess what? I'm Jewish, folks. Well, I'm of Hebrew descent, rather. I don't follow any of them religions. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Christian. I'm not Muslim. I'm not Buddhist. I'm human. And I do firmly believe that that's the religion that Jesus was teaching. I do firmly believe that Jesus was teaching humanity, tolerance, an actual love, which you're not going to find in any church. A church is just a building. Now, let's say we're in Nazi Germany, right? You've got 200 Jews in the community. So first you slander them and ostracize them. Tell everybody it's the Jews' fault. So then those Jews, those 200 people, they have a lot less resources to work with. Then you forbid them from having or owning business. So you've taken their resources even further away from them. And you blame them for everything. So the public hates them. And the public that doesn't hate them is afraid to speak up because they'll be punished. All these hundreds of people telling me they're afraid of being punished, and that's the reason they didn't come forward, or telling me that they were punished and they're too afraid to proceed. But that's not all they do, is it? No, they take these people away. First they lock them up away from everybody else, and people get sick and they die because they're malnourished. They're not able to take care of themselves. So you lose about 20 Jews. You're down to 180 Jews.
Hello, welcome to McDonald's. How can I get started? The large coffee 50/15?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you much.
All right.
I'll be there with $1. Thank you. Then, of course, you got a war going on, and you drag off a bunch of the Jews to go serve as rear echelon. Their job is to feed mules and stuff like that. You send some of them to forced labor camps elsewhere. Well, now you're down to 100 Jews in your community. You got a lot less people to work with. You don't have any resources. You got no logistics, and there's a lot of hatred for you. And anybody who helps you has to be afraid of being shot in the fucking head. Here in America, it's a capitalist society. We like to rape people financially. It works. I worked for the Germans to isolate the Jews, and it works here today. Yes, ma'am. Now, let's say you got that 100 Jews, right? Now, you can't ship them all out at once. You got to take them out a bit at a time. So you got to take a portion of them out. You got to send them to your extermination camps, Auschwitz.com. So how many are you down to? Well, they'll take 20 in the first trip. Now you're down to 180. They'll take 40 in the next trip. They're getting better and more efficient. Put more resources to it. So now you're down to 40. Thanks, sir. Perfect. Yes, sir. So, you got them 40 Jews. They've seen what happened to all the other Jews. They're not wanting to speak up if anything goes wrong. If something does go wrong, you tell them to go to their local Gestapo office and they'll take care of it. Well, you get 5 people who go down to the local Gestapo office and they just never return. So now you're down to 35 Jews. Well, the next train's coming. You got 35 Jews and there's room enough on the trains, now that they're super efficient, to transport 80 of you. You guys are isolated with no resources. They've taken all of your friends because you didn't mount a resistance when there was 200 of you. You wanted to wait and see what happened. Fucking stupid. Congratulations, dumbass. On the bright side, there were still people who mounted a resistance, and there were still people who were willing to give up their lives for others and see the right thing was done. Because it was the right thing to do. Not because that person was a Jew. Kissing a Jew was illegal. So obviously reproducing with one was highly illegal. Did you know you could be shot for kissing a Jew in World War II? And just so you know, anti-Semitism in the United States was not much better. And the horrible things that we still complain that commies did and that the Nazis did, we still do those things to our own population, don't we? We just call it something different. Like we don't call it torture when we do it to a homeless person. You're not actually trying to get information out of them when you torture them. Some people, yes, but I mean, for the most part, no. When you change the name, that does not change the act. When you change the name from chain gang to labor camp or forced labor camp, it's the same thing. Since the Nazis criminalized every goddamn thing, well, you can go into a forced labor camp just for existing, just like here in America, where they have no one left to target. They're not allowed to target blacks anymore. They're not allowed to target Native Americans anymore. They're not allowed, but they still do. And that's the point that many of these groups are making, like BLM. It's illegal for them to do it, but they're still doing it, is the point that they're making. What's so hideous and gross and disgusting about that is that it's still not illegal to do those things to the homeless. There are still no laws that actually protect us. There are still no organizations that actively lend us a voice. Now, what did it cost? What did it cost the Jews in that scenario? Well, really, you should ask what it cost the rest of the world. Not just Germany. Japan's racial intolerance and America's racial intolerance were equals to the Nazi regime. Equals. Equally ruthless, equally hateful. And yes, there were entire divisions of the German army that were criminals. Germans who kissed a Jew, Germans who may have spoken up about how wrong these things were. Maybe one of them said that they had a friend who was a Jew. Or maybe one of them said something about not agreeing with Goebbels. Or maybe one of them said that Goering was a fat slob once. And now all of a sudden you're on a mine marching brigade. What's your job? You get into your German Nazi uniform. Mostly just German uniforms, but at the end of the war, it could be a Nazi SS uniform even. These are your prison brigades, and they go out and they stomp down minefields. They play Operation Human Shield. Their job is to keep the enemy forces shooting at somebody who doesn't even have bullets in their rifle. Some of these people, their rifles were welded shut. Part of the reason for that is because, well, the Germans would take the bolt out of a rifle. That's the part that makes it work. One of the parts that is essential for it to work. You can't fire the bullet without that part in there. And of course, if that part's not in there, you can't run the lever action to put a bullet into the chamber. But they started welding them shut because, well, even though the British, when they encountered those units, they mowed them down like grass. Americans, we had snipers assigned to every combat unit. Somebody who is at least expert or better. It's expert and then marksman. Those are the two highest. And these people, their job is to take out specific targets. If you take out the officers first, that's what this person's job specifically is to do, is to take out officers and communications. Well, when they see that, number one, there's no actual officers, and number two, there's no bolt in the gun, they're not going to shoot. This is a prison brigade. These guys are more than likely going to give you every piece of information about where they just come from. That's as close to real time as you're going to get in World War II. American soldiers see a German prison brigade marching across the field, and they'd be like, hold your fire, let him come. Hey guys, how you doing? Good to see you. Hop in the foxhole. So, of course, the Germans had to do something to make sure that didn't work. So they started welding bolts. They just welded in place so you couldn't use it anymore. Now, the German people, you get to see how their population was decimated. Their infrastructure was decimated. Their countryside was decimated. Their cities were decimated. Hell, we dropped so many bombs in one night on just one town in Germany that almost every occupant of the entire city, we're not talking about a small town, this is a big city in Germany, they all fucking died. They suffocated to death. The inferno didn't burn them to death. The fires sucked all of the oxygen in the environment up. There was no air for people to breathe. Imagine going to a city of, well, let's make it a small city. 50,000 people is all. After a night like that, and you're one of the cleanup crew the next day, imagine how long it's going to take. Imagine the smell. It's not like you're walking into somebody's house after they had a heart attack and you are able to get them out of there on a nice mobile stretcher with wheels and all the fixings. No, you're getting them out of there on a combat litter or a stretcher, you might call it. And you're having to dig through debris. You're going to have to step over debris and crawl through debris. And there are people who are going to be underneath houses that it's going to take months or years for you to get to them. Over 30% of the bodies in Berlin are still buried because they flattened and built over the top of it. After years of those bodies sitting underground while the war was happening, because I mean the strategic bombing of the people of Berlin started in like major in 1942 and 43. By 1944 or 1945, I mean, there was so much combat strength that it didn't matter anymore. They was just going to be able to keep on doing that no matter what. I mean, the Royal Air Force and the American Air Force, or the Army Air Corps, I should say, did a great job of making sure they didn't do to Berlin what they did to, I believe it was Dresden. There's now this is according to a YouTube video that I was watching. The guy was going through these 11 different like large towns or small cities in Germany that every single resident died. Every one of them. Every single person who lived there died. All because of the 8th Air Force. So, you know, that's pretty significant, and it's something to think about. The hatred of the Jews and the homeless and the disabled was ultimately Germany's downfall, and we thought that we were woke after that. We were woke to racism. We weren't going to let that happen again. We were woke to it. Just like we pretending to be woke today, but you are ignoring the most victimized people in the country. Just like the Germans, the other Untermenschen in Germany. They were fine with the Jews being targeted because as long as they were going after the Jews first, that gave them time. Of course, I don't know what good time that did them because anticipation of death is worse than death itself. They knew they were going to be next after the Jews. And they were afraid the entire time. Many of them died a coward's death, as they well deserved. When the Russians went through, you know, it didn't matter if you were a civilian or a Nazi SS officer. You needed to retreat immediately when they came down the street, or they would shoot you through your goddamn windows. You put that fucking white flag out and you keep it there. But if you put out the white flag and the Red Army doesn't quite keep or hold the street, well, some of them Germans are going to remember which white flags were coming out of what windows, and they're going to go up there and they're going to shoot you as per instruction. The civilians at that point didn't have a choice in the matter. The mayhem and the destruction was just too great. They had been too cowardly while it happened to others. And the ones who had the balls to stand up to the Third Reich had already done so, had already failed, had already been hung. That guy that was talking to me from Germany, when I was telling him about that girl who was hung, he said, you know, he even knew her name. He told me her name. But he also said it wasn't just her. We like to pretend every German was a Nazi. But that's simply not the case. Most of them were just cowards. That's how they ended up in the situation they ended up in. At first, it was complacency. They didn't care because it wasn't happening to them. Then when they realized that it was a really fucked up issue, they wanted to make excuses. They wanted to look the other way. They wanted to pretend it wasn't happening. And then ultimately, what happened? It came to bite them in the ass. The British and the French were complacent, while Hitler rose to power and did whatever the hell he wanted. They didn't try to arm themselves as they should have. You know who armed the great arsenal of democracy? Theodore Roosevelt. Not his grandson. Theodore Roosevelt. He set in motion everything that was required for us to have the infrastructure that we did, so that we could fight a major war, World War I and World War II. Cal Coolidge gets the credit because he was the president in World War I, and Franklin gets the credit because he was the president in World War II. But if you take a look at all of the great powers like Great Britain. Great Britain is just Britain now, just so you know. It is just Britain. I've been talking to my phone for over an hour. It tells me when someone calls or messages me, and the lady I'm waiting on has not called or messaged me, so here I am, keeping myself entertained by talking to you. Not that there's any viewers or anybody who cares, but in case somebody ever eventually does. This is what it's like being devoid of having a friend to talk to. You notice that most of the people that talk to me are either completely batshit fucking crazy, or they're severely traumatized. And that's the majority of my conversations. I'm a sponge for my environment. If that's what I'm dealing with, and I'm trying to get your help while that's going on, that's what you're going to have to deal with. You expect me to deal with all of your stuff. Well, you know what? I've got my own issues too. I've got people in my life that died too. I didn't use them as an excuse not to try for 6 fucking years. When you turn an eye away from the homeless, keep in mind while you're trying to get special rights, which are horrible. Special rights for colored people, that's racist. Special rights for women, well, that's sexist. And while you're all fighting for those special rights, legal precedents are being set against homeless people of every color, every religion, every gender, every sexual orientation. So where it really matters is within the homeless community, where they're setting these legal precedents that they're able to use to deny black people their rights, and deny natives their rights, and deny women their rights, and deny men their rights. These are all because legal precedents were set because people don't care about the homeless. So when homeless people were railroaded and of course, your laws were not followed, you guys didn't care. You allowed that legal precedence to be set. And now that it is set and you're having to pay the fucking consequences, you're not happy about it. And as always, you blame the victims. It's the victim's fault. It's the victim's fault. They wanted it and chose it. No, it's your fault for being complacent, dumbass. The Germans, they knew what they were doing. They knew how to play on the hearts and the minds of the people. They knew how to twist and manipulate things. And Albert Speer, this is a guy that was in charge of Hitler's propaganda department, worked for the United States propaganda department and the British propaganda department while serving in prison for his part in the Third Reich. All right, I'm done talking at you people. By you people, I don't mean any specific color, gender, religion. What I mean is that those of you who are a part of my species, who understand that we are all the same species, regardless of skin color. Good to be with you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind.